as the prime equity clause. The prime equity clause gives Sanders a percentage of all revenue generated from merchandise, sponsorships, and promotion tied to his name and
And is suing him for $100 million because of Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th round.
Since Shedeur Sanders stepped into the NFL spotlight, the drama hasn't slowed down for a second. From legal headaches to controversial moves, his journey has been anything but quiet. But this latest bombshell? It's sending shockwaves across the entire league. Reports claim Sanders just locked in a jaw-dropping $250 million deal outside the NFL, and the owners are furious. It all started when Sanders signed his rookie contract with the Cleveland Browns on May 19, 2025. On the surface, it looked routine, just another 5th-round pick, 144th overall, inking a standard 4-year deal worth $4.65 million. Nothing wild, right? Wrong. Hidden inside that contract was a clause so bold, so unheard of, that it could flip the power balance between players and teams forever. They're calling it the Prime Equity Clause. And it's not just a line on paper, it's a revolution. This clause gives Sanders a percentage of all revenue generated from his name, image, and likeness. Merchandise, sponsorships, promotions, you name it. That means he isn't just a Browns player anymore. He's a business partner with the organization. That kind of setup has NFL bosses shaking because it tears apart the old salary model they've guarded for decades. Nobody knows the exact percentage yet, but insiders whisper it's between 5 and 6%. That may sound small, but in NFL money, that's millions flowing directly into Sanders' pocket, stacked on top of his regular salary. Suddenly, he's not just getting paid, he's collecting commissions like a brand owner. It's the type of move that could change contract negotiations across the league forever.
We have something if he could prove collusion.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
But not liking him isn't collusion.
Well,
that's not collusion. You have your right to not draft somebody because you don't.
To see how wild this is, just compare Sanders to the #1 pick, Caleb Williams. Williams signed a 4-year, $39.4 million deal with Chicago, with a $25.5 million signing bonus up front. Meanwhile, Sanders' base contract looks modest, with just $447,000 guaranteed through his signing bonus and base salaries that rise from $840,000 in 2025 to $1.2 million in 2028. But thanks to that revolutionary clause, Sanders may end up laughing all the way to the bank while the rest of the league watches in disbelief. The setup of Sanders' deal looks normal on the surface. It follows the rookie wage scale put in place by the NFL's 2011 collective bargaining agreement. That system locks contracts based on draft position and gives players little room to negotiate. As a 5th-round pick, Sanders got the basic 4-year agreement without the extra 5th-year option that only first-rounders receive. Pretty standard, right? Not this time. On paper, the Browns could even cut Sanders after his first year with almost no dead cap hit, making it a safe gamble for the franchise. But that tiny line buried in the contract, the equity clause, it completely flips the math. What makes this deal historic isn't the base salary at all. It's the groundbreaking equity clause. And it's already making Sanders money that rookie players only dream about. His jersey sales alone have exploded to a reported $250 million, and that haul has already earned him around $14 million in commission. That's more than his entire 4-year base contract combined, and more than most veteran quarterbacks take home in their first year.
in business, people understand how valuable your own platform is, especially because it builds and it grows over time. And in this situation, right, him retaining full ownership of all his personal media content, that means he could post NFL.
The legal design of this clause is slick. Instead of breaking the NFL's strict salary cap rules, it's framed as a revenue-sharing deal. Technically, it's treated as business income, not salary, which keeps it perfectly compliant with the collective bargaining agreement. That's what makes it so dangerous to the old system. Sanders is allegedly pocketing between 5 and 6% of the Browns' NIL-related revenue. Everything from jersey sales to sponsorships, digital content, and promotional campaigns tied to his brand. And here's the real kicker. This isn't just one revenue stream, it's multiple, Every piece of merchandise, every slogan, every digital clip connected to Sanders' name pumps money into his account and boosts the Browns' bottom line at the same time. That's unheard of for a fifth rounder, and it's why this deal is already shaking the entire league. Sanders isn't just another player on the payroll anymore. This deal turns him into a profit center. Instead of being seen as a cost against the salary cap, he's a full-on business engine. But here's where it gets even crazier. The money is only half the story. The contract actually gives Sanders full ownership of all his personal media content and digital platforms. Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, everything. That's unheard of in pro sports. Normally, teams lock down what players post, control their image, and decide how their message goes out. But Sanders? He flipped the script. His deal puts the power of the narrative directly in his hands, making him the boss of his own story while the Browns still get a cut of the cash his platforms pull in. It's a total power move that no rookie has ever had. And it doesn't stop there. The deal even lets Sanders' half-brother, Deion Sanders Jr., set up shop as his behind-the-sscenes media crew.
Bucky is able to be behind the scenes that way because it's in Shedeur's contract that he controls his own media. Why? Why would Shedeur want to control his own media? Because then I could paint my own narratives, and then I can let.
That means inside access to NFL life like fans have never seen before, with cameras rolling where the league usually slams the door shut. This wasn't easy to push through. It required a green light from Commissioner Roger Goodell himself, which just shows how wild and unprecedented these negotiations really were. Normally, the NFL would clamp down on that kind of content instantly, but Sanders got an exemption written directly into his contract. Then there's the tax twist. Because the equity clause money counts as business income, Sanders isn't just collecting a paycheck like everyone else, he's running an enterprise. Sure, it makes his taxes more complicated with self-employment rules, but it also opens the door to massive benefits. Business deductions, investment opportunities, even write-offs tied to his brand could put him way ahead financially in the long run. Sanders isn't just breaking into the NFL, he's rewriting the entire playbook for how athletes do business. The money doesn't stop with Sanders' contract, it skyrockets once you look at his endorsement empire. What started as his college NIL hustle has rolled straight into the pros without missing a beat. His Nike deal alone is rumored to pull in $5 to $10 million every single year. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Add in partnerships with Beats by Dre, Gatorade, Mercedes-Benz, and Urban Outfitters, and suddenly Sanders is stacking checks from every corner of the culture. Back in college, his NIL valuation sat at around $6.5 million annually. But in the NFL, those numbers explode. Now, when you combine his equity clause earnings with endorsements, Sanders' total first-year compensation is estimated to fall between $18 and $37 million. That would make him the highest-paid rookie in NFL history. And remember, he was only drafted in the 5th round. The fact that he's now raking in veteran-level money shows just how far personal branding can go in today's sports game. And this isn't without precedent. Sanders' playbook has roots in history's biggest athlete deals.
As this is already paid off, Shedeur's rookie jersey has reportedly hit $250 million in sales, earning him $14 million in commission, which far exceeds most.
Back in 1984, Michael Jordan's groundbreaking Nike contract, with royalties from Air Jordan sales, changed the game forever. Cristiano Ronaldo's deal with Real Madrid included image rights worth €20 million a year, proving that global superstars could cash in on their name as much as their play. Sanders is now dragging that same model straight into the NFL, and owners are sweating. The real shock here is the gap between where he was drafted and the fortune he's pulling in. Traditionally, value in the NFL has been tied strictly to draft stock and on-field performance. But Sanders' contract proves the rules have changed. Branding, social media, and cultural influence are now just as valuable as touchdowns and passing yards. Sanders isn't just redefining his worth, he's showing the entire league a new way to calculate power and money. The backstory makes Sanders' rise even more jaw-dropping. Just months ago, he was projected as a top 10 draft pick. But instead of hearing his name called early, he slid all the way to 144th overall, a drop that cost him nearly $44 million in traditional contract value compared to guys like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. On paper, that looked like a disaster. But now, thanks to his groundbreaking deal and unmatched personal brand power, Sanders may actually end up out-earning both of them in his very first years. The precedent here is massive. Never before has an NFL rookie pulled off equity participation in team revenue tied to his personal brand. Sanders just wrote the blueprint for a new generation of athletes, a model where college NIL momentum flows straight into pro contracts without slowing down.
This has already paid off. Shedeur's rookie jersey has reportedly hit $250 million in sales, earning him $14 million in commission, which far exceeds most rookies.
By bridging that gap, players can finally carry their brand power into the league instead of leaving it behind at the draft stage. That's a game changer. And let's be clear, this wasn't just smart business. It was a revolutionary play by Sanders and his team, led by his father, Deion Sanders. They didn't just secure a deal. They may have permanently changed how professional sports contracts are negotiated. But this contract didn't happen in a vacuum. The drama leading up to it was just as wild as the deal itself. Sanders' shocking fall into the 5th round wasn't normal. It was one of the most dramatic quarterback slides in recent memory. And it came with whispers of collusion and coordinated resistance from teams that didn't want to touch him. Those allegations have sparked heated debates, legal threats, and questions about whether the NFL system is still stacked against disruptive players who dare to challenge the norm. Heading into the 2025 draft, Sanders was hyped as a top 10 lock, with mock drafts placing him as high as number 10. 1 overall to the Miami Dolphins or number 2 to the Las Vegas Raiders. His college resume backed it up too, and yet he fell. That fall set the stage for the revolutionary contract that's now turning the entire league upside down. In his final year at Colorado, Sanders put up monster numbers. A 72.3% completion rate, 4,134 yards, 37 touchdowns, and just 10 interceptions, finishing with a 169.1 passer rating. Stats like that should have locked him in as one of the top quarterbacks in the draft. Yet despite those elite numbers and a high-profile college career, Sanders sat and watched as 143 names were called before his own.
In business, people understand how valuable your own platform is, especially because it builds and it grows over time. And in this situation, right, him retaining full ownership of all his personal media content, that means he could post.
The financial hit from that slide was brutal. If he'd gone first overall, Sanders could have banked about $48.8 million over 4 years, including a massive $32.2 million signing bonus. Even as the number 2 pick, he was looking at roughly $46.6 million with $30 million guaranteed. Instead, being drafted in the 5th round left him with a modest $4.65 million contract. That's a staggering $44 million loss in traditional contract value. This fall ranks among the most shocking quarterback draft slides in modern history, comparable to Brady Quinn's tumble in 2007 or Geno Smith's in 2009-2013, but neither of them came in with Sanders' hype. So what really caused such a dramatic fall? The answers depend on who you ask. Some analysts point to genuine football concerns, while others whisper about something far more suspicious: coordinated resistance from NFL insiders who weren't ready for a disruptive player to shake up the system. On paper, scouting reports flagged a few issues. Critics pointed to shaky deep ball accuracy, his habit of holding the ball too long, which led to 52 sacks in 2023, and doubts about whether he could adapt from Colorado's simplified spread offense to the NFL's complex playbooks. Some scouts even stamped him as a system quarterback, claiming he thrived in Colorado's scheme, but might stumble against NFL defenses. And then came the 2025 NFL Combine. Physically, Sanders looked solid at 6 feet 2 inches, 215 pounds, and a 4.78 40. But mixed reviews during drills and interviews only added to the narrative, fueling doubts that sent his draft stock into free fall. Whether it was fair critique or something darker at play, the result was the same. Sanders took one of the steepest draft slides ever, only to bounce back with a contract that rewrote the rulebook.
I hate Shedeur Sanders. This is what it's about, man. It's that the things that he's coming in negotiating have never been done before. They always want it, and they like it for players to stay in a position of service.
Sanders' draft day drama didn't just come from stats or combined results. It got personal. His second 40-yard dash wasn't the issue, but his interviews raised eyebrows across the league. Reports say he came off as too confident, with some teams flat out calling it arrogance or entitlement. Anonymous GMs claimed Sanders insisted on having franchise-level control, from picking coaches to influencing schemes, and that instantly set off alarms about his coachability and whether he was truly a team-first guy. Then came the family factor, which only added fuel to the fire. Deion Sanders' bold public comments stirred major controversy, especially when he suggested Shedeur wouldn't even consider playing for certain teams, particularly in cold-weather cities like Cleveland. That rubbed franchises the wrong way. Legends like Kurt Warner and Chris Carter even criticized the Sanders camp, saying the family had overplayed their hand and turned Deion's media presence into a non-stop distraction teams didn't want to deal with. Suddenly, drafting Shedeur wasn't just about picking a quarterback. It meant inheriting his entire family's media circus. But the most explosive layer of this saga isn't just perception, it's the allegations of collusion. Some claim NFL teams worked together behind the scenes to push Sanders down the draft board. These accusations aren't coming from random voices either. They've been amplified by respected figures in the football world, raising questions that go far beyond typical draft chatter. At the heart of it are concerns about league governance and even whispers of discriminatory practices. NFL Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson dropped the biggest bombshell yet.
Why they hate Shedeur Sanders. This is what it's about, man. It's that the things that he's coming in negotiating have never been done before. They always want it, and they like it for players to stay in a position of service.
On the Robin and Rodney show, Dickerson said a trusted source told him the NFL actually instructed teams not to draft Sanders, basically to make an example of him for treating the pre-draft process more like a recruitment tour than a job interview. Even more shocking, Dickerson alleged that the Browns themselves were originally told to pass on Sanders, only to be convinced later by an unnamed insider to take the gamble. If true, that would mean Sanders' draft slide wasn't just about football. It was about power, politics, and control at the very top of the NFL. These accusations painted a picture far bigger than one team's choice. They hinted at a coordinated league-wide resistance. Former NFL MVP Boomer Esiason poured gasoline on the fire when he claimed multiple owners directly instructed their teams not to draft Sanders. Then ESPN's Stephen A. Smith took it even further, saying owners were united in their stance against Sanders, even comparing it to Kaepernick-level collusion. According to Smith, resentment toward Deion Sanders himself played a major role, with reports of private texts and communications between owners that showed just how deep this resistance went. The controversy didn't stay in sports talk shows. It bled straight into the courtroom. In May 2025, a Colorado Buffaloes fan actually filed a $100 million lawsuit against the NFL, accusing the league of antitrust violations under the Sherman Act, racial discrimination under the Civil Rights Act, and collusion that caused emotional distress. The suit demanded access to internal owner communications, scouting reports, and even an alleged 61-page arbitration report detailing collusion against black quarterbacks.
Sanders has the prime equity clause. The prime equity clause gives Sanders a percentage of all revenue generated from merchandise, sponsorships, and promotion tied to his name, image, and...
Most legal experts predict the case won't hold up, But the very fact it was filed shows how seriously some people view these accusations. Sanders' own pre-draft demands added more fuel to the narrative. Reports say he wanted guarantees on playing time, offensive schemes built around his style, and even influence in personnel decisions. The boldest demand of all, his push for the prime equity clause, had teams terrified. Executives feared giving in would set a dangerous precedent, opening the door for future rookies to demand the same revolutionary structure. To many franchises, it felt like overreach from a player who hadn't even proven himself in the NFL yet. That perception created major resistance, with teams labeling him as making first overall pick demands, despite his draft stock slipping. The NFL environment has always been wary of rookies who try to flip the power dynamic, and Sanders became the poster boy for that fear. The parallels to history make it even harder to ignore. Back in 2017, Colin Kaepernick's case showed the league was capable of collusion at the highest levels, with owners working together to keep him off the field. That lawsuit ultimately settled for millions after evidence surfaced of coordinated resistance. Sanders' story has now been linked to that same shadowy playbook, one where business, politics, and race collide in ways the NFL desperately tries to keep out of the spotlight. The NFL already has a legal history when it comes to collusion. Colin Kaepernick's case proved it's possible when hard evidence of coordination exists. More recently, Lamar Jackson's 2023 free agency stirred the same conversation. Teams across the league seemed unwilling to meet his demand for a fully guaranteed contract. And while he eventually landed a record-breaking deal with Baltimore, the drawn-out process left many questioning whether there had been quiet resistance behind the scenes.
$1 million because of Shedeur Sanders falling to the 5th round of NFL draft, claiming emotional distress, trauma, and other things.
That's why the Sanders case hits differently, because there's also a racial dimension here. Critics point out that for decades, Black quarterbacks have often been undervalued, overscouted, or judged through a harsher lens than their white counterparts. Sanders' confident demeanor, mixed with his family's loud and proud advocacy, may have triggered unconscious bias that influenced his draft position beyond pure football reasons. But not everyone's buying the collusion theory. Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated pushed back, saying there's no smoking gun of league-wide coordination. Instead, he chalks it up to valid football concerns, shaky interview performances, family interference, and on-field red flags like Sanders' tendency to hold the ball too long, which left him a sack magnet. Breer's argument: teams didn't need a secret agreement. They already had enough reasons to pass. The truth probably sits somewhere in the messy middle. Not a full-blown conspiracy, but not pure coincidence either. Sanders' mix of elite talent, polarizing personality, family dynamics, and wild contract demands created a perfect storm. That storm scared off a lot of teams, but it also opened the door for the Browns to swoop in late and lock down the most revolutionary rookie deal in NFL history. And here's the wildest irony. The same factors that tanked his draft stock may have ended up helping him. By sliding all the way to the 5th round, Sanders landed with the one team willing to gamble on rewriting the rules of NFL contracts. What looked like a nightmare draft day might turn out to be the very thing that launched him into history. In the end, Sanders fell into the perfect storm, a team willing to gamble on his vision and negotiate terms no rookie had ever dreamed of. The twist? He now stands to earn more in his first year than he would have as a top 10 pick. What looked like a career setback flipped into a massive opportunity, proving that sometimes the real winners are the ones bold enough to think differently about value creation. As Sanders began his pro career in Cleveland, the controversy surrounding his draft position turned into both an opportunity and a test. His rookie season wasn't just about football anymore. It became the front line of a much bigger fight over player empowerment. Every snap, every endorsement, every clause in that contract put pressure on the NFL establishment, and the league's pushback revealed just how deep the cracks in the old system really run. What started as one rookie's revolutionary deal quickly snowballed into a battle for the future of professional sports. This wasn't just about Shedeur Sanders and the Browns. It was about whether athletes everywhere could finally claim more control over their careers, their brands, and their money. The implications go way beyond football, reaching into the very heart of how athletes and organizations negotiate power. The clearest sign of league anxiety came straight from the top: Commissioner Roger Goodell himself. In a widely circulated clip of him speaking with Shedeur Sanders, Goodell made a comment that seemed harmless at first. But to insiders, it screamed of the league's fear over what was really happening. This wasn't about whether Shedeur could throw touchdowns on Sundays. It was about his father's sharp business moves setting a precedent that could forever change contract negotiations. That single exchange exposed the truth. The NFL isn't just worried about Sanders' play on the field. They're worried about the blueprint he and his family are building off of it. And that's a threat no league executive can ignore. Shedeur Sanders' influence isn't just fatherly support, it's a direct challenge to the NFL's power structure. With his insider knowledge of league operations and the business savvy to expose cracks in traditional contract models, Shedeur has become a real threat to the status quo. And nowhere is that tension more obvious than in Cleveland itself. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam's reaction has been very telling. Even though the team rolled out the red carpet for Sanders before the draft, reports say Haslam distanced himself from the pick once backlash hit, with whispers he might even chase Arch Manning despite already having Sanders under contract. That kind of hesitation screams internal conflict. Inside the ownership circle, the anxiety runs even deeper. The fear isn't just about Sanders' deal today, it's about the domino effect it could unleash tomorrow. Anonymous reports say some owners absolutely hate the equity clause, calling it a dangerous precedent that could inflate costs and erode the control they've held for decades. The nightmare scenario? The next first-round superstar, or even established veterans, demanding the same kind of revenue-sharing power Sanders just secured. That would turn the NFL's contract system upside down. And the pushback isn't only about money, it's about control of the narrative. For years, the NFL has tightly guarded how players communicate, what they post, and how their stories are told. Sanders blew that wide open by retaining ownership of his personal media rights. That move alone is a direct shot at the league's iron grip on player messaging. The situation escalated even further with the approval of Shedeur Sanders Jr.'s media rights arrangement. Allowing him to embed his content operation within the Browns' ecosystem was unheard of. And it only happened after Commissioner Roger Goodell personally stepped in. That one decision rattled owners, who now fear a flood of similar requests from future players demanding media freedom the league has never allowed before. Sanders' preseason debut against the Carolina Panthers looked like the perfect validation of his bold contract gamble. He went 14 of 23 for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, proving that his college dominance could carry over into the pros. For supporters, that game was all the proof they needed. His draft slide wasn't just unfair, it might have been rooted in something deeper, maybe even discriminatory. The Browns' investment suddenly looked like genius, but football always delivers a twist. And in the final preseason matchup against the Los Angeles Rams, Sanders hit a wall. He was sacked 5 times, managed just 10 of 18 for 95 yards, and threw an interception. Critics pounced instantly, saying this was the nightmare they warned about. Questions about his pocket presence and decision-making under pressure resurfaced, echoing all the concerns scouts had used to justify passing on him in the draft. Suddenly, the narrative flipped again. Former NFL quarterback Robert Griffin III jumped into the fire, publicly defending Sanders. RG3 argued the Browns were setting him up to fail by not giving him proper support when the pressure was on. That sparked even more controversy, with conspiracy theories swirling that Cleveland's coaches were mishandling their rookie quarterback on purpose. The team was forced to issue responses just to quiet the noise, and instead of calming things down, the drama only grew louder. Meanwhile, Sanders' global brand kept exploding. His Nike campaigns, combined with 5.7 million Instagram followers, with 15% of them international, prove that he's not just a US star, he's a global one. Jersey sales have been booming in places like the UK, Germany, and Brazil, where NFL fandom is rapidly expanding. That reach represents revenue streams that go way beyond what traditional contracts ever accounted for. And that's exactly why Sanders is so disruptive. His value doesn't fit in the old box. He's not just another quarterback fighting for snaps. He's a global brand pumping money into markets the NFL hasn't even cracked yet. That makes him both the league's biggest asset and one of its biggest threats. Sanders' groundbreaking equity clause isn't just about one player's paycheck. It's setting the stage for future battles at the bargaining table. Analysts are already saying his deal could become a central talking point in the 2026 CBA negotiations. The big question? Whether revenue-sharing clauses like Sanders will be capped, restricted, or formally built into league contracts as standard options. Once that debate kicks off, it could redefine the very foundation of how athletes in the NFL get paid. And the ripple effect doesn't stop at football. Leagues in basketball, baseball, and soccer are all watching closely. If Sanders' experiment works, athletes in other sports will almost certainly demand similar deals, putting pressure on their leagues to adapt or risk losing credibility with players who now see a new path to power. The success of Sanders' contract could push professional sports into a whole new era, where branding and revenue sharing are as important as touchdowns and championships. What makes this even more significant is that Sanders' contract signals the shift from individual hustle to systematic change. By tying revenue directly to his personal brand value, Sanders and his team have created a repeatable template that other athletes can follow. That's not just empowerment. It's a blueprint for flipping the balance of power between players and organizations. If other athletes copy this model, owners may soon find themselves negotiating with business partners instead of just employees. Now the spotlight is on the NFL itself. Will the league embrace these innovations as a way to fuel growth and tap into new markets? Or will they fight back, clinging to traditional control at the risk of alienating their biggest stars? However it plays out, Sanders has forced the NFL, and maybe all of professional sports, to reveal how willing they really are to evolve in the face of changing cultural and economic realities. If you enjoyed this breakdown, drop a comment with your take on Sanders' revolutionary contract. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you on the next one.